China could launch a surprise nuclear attack on the U.S., according to a top U.S. general. NBA star Enes Kanter crosses China's red line. And the worst thing you'll hear all week. That and more on this week's China News Headlines. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. This week's China News Headlines that you can enjoy watching while wearing one of our new China Uncensored t-shirts, or while drinking from a China Uncensored mug. And they're not made in China. Visit ChinaUncensored.tv/merchandise for more. Over the summer, China tested a hypersonic weapon. It was considered a breakthrough for the Chinese military, and it was something the Pentagon did not think China could do. And now, top U.S. General John Hyten, the Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, is warning this breakthrough could mean China is able to launch a surprise nuclear attack against the U.S. That's according to an exclusive interview he gave on CBS.
Unlike a ballistic missile, which travels in a predictable arc, a hypersonic weapon maneuvers much closer to the Earth, making it harder for radars to see. Combined with hundreds of new missile silos China is building, Hyten believes the Chinese are developing the capability to launch a surprise nuclear attack on the U.S.
Why are they building all of this capability? They look like a first-use weapon. That's what those weapons look like to me.
Last month, Hyten called China's military progress stunning. And he warned China may even surpass the U.S. military. Hyten said the pace they're moving and the trajectory they're on will surpass Russia and the United States if we don't do something to change it. It will happen. We know from satellite photos that China is rapidly building missile silos deep in its western desert, which is why it's always so nice to hear that U.S. companies are giving money to China so they can build sensitive technology like advanced microchips that can be used against us. It's like Silicon Valley is putting a giant "nuke me" sign on America's back. But surely nothing will go wrong, because earlier this week, President Biden and Chinese leader Xi Jinping had a virtual summit. I'll tell you what happened after this quick commercial break. Welcome back. President Biden and Chinese leader Xi Jinping held a nearly 4-hour virtual summit this week. And considering how China has openly declared war on the United States for decades, and now might be able to launch a surprise nuclear attack on the U.S., this might be wishful thinking.
As I've said before, it seems to me our responsibility as leaders of China and the United States is to ensure that the competition between our countries does not veer into conflict, whether intended or unintended. Just simple, straightforward competition.
And not just competition. Biden wants to focus on strategic stability with China. So instead of the Trump-era strategic competition with China, we now have strategic stability. Yeah! Engagement intensifying. That's what you do with a regime that's vowed to destroy you. Meanwhile, Xi Jinping directly threatened Biden.
But the talks did wrap up with at least one clear warning from the Chinese president that when it comes to Taiwan and any U.S. intervention, that's, quote, just like playing with fire. Whoever plays with fire will get burned.
Oh, wow, that sounds pretty serious. Wait, I know. Let's throw money at China. Maybe that will get them to love us. The U.S. and China also agreed to ease restrictions on journalists. And by that, I mean the U.S. will have to host more Chinese propaganda agents, and China will still massively restrict U.S. journalists in China. As my favorite state-run media, the Global Times, says, China may have agreed to ease restrictions on U.S. reporters, but China haters are still unwelcome. But it's not just stupid journalists with their reporting that's upsetting the Chinese Communist Party. According to the Washington Post, the Biden administration will soon announce a diplomatic boycott of the Beijing Olympics. Right now, it's unclear exactly how that boycott would be executed, but probably not as brutally executed as ethnic minorities in China, which is something NBA star Enes Kanter talked about this week. More after the break. Welcome back. NBA star Enes Kanter has crossed China's red line, the thing the CCP absolutely does not want people talking about. Forced organ harvesting from prisoners of conscience, as in killing people for their organs, particularly Falun Gong practitioners and Uyghurs. Now, last week I talked about how Kanter mentioned organ harvesting in a CNN interview, but now Kanter has gone even further by putting it on his shoes. That's bloody stylish. He also tweeted, "The Chinese government engages in forced organ harvesting. Ethnic and religious groups, Tibetans, Uyghurs in death camps, Christians, Falun Gong are all targeted." Not only that, but Kanter tweeted at President Biden, "Stop playing games with bullies and do what you promised to the world. Prioritize human rights," while posting photos of Biden's strategic stability with China from back when he was vice president. Kanter has been on a record streak of calling out the Chinese Communist Party. Even the country of Taiwan is thanking Kanter for his outspoken support of a free Taiwan. It's amazing to see Kanter go so hard on the Chinese Communist Party, especially after how badly the NBA caved to Chinese pressure in wake of the Hong Kong protests. I mean, the NBA has billions on the line in China, and Kanter just keeps talking about organ harvesting. By the way, Kanter's coach says the reason he's been benched basically the entire season is strictly based on basketball and has nothing to do with his stance against the Chinese government. Right. Which is why Kanter tweeted this video with the message, "Keep limiting me on the court, I will expose you off the court." You may remember a few weeks ago I told you about Peng Shuai, the Chinese tennis star who accused one of the most powerful men in China of sexually assaulting her. Well, she's missing now. This week, the Women's Tennis Association, WTA, issued a statement calling for an investigation into Peng's allegations. And tennis star Naomi Osaka tweeted her support for Peng with the hashtag #WhereIsPengShuai. In response, Chinese state-run television published what they say is an email from Peng to the head of the WTA. An email that does not at all look like a hostage note. The email claims that Peng is not unsafe, she's just resting at home, and everything is fine. Also, the email just happens to have a cursor in the middle of one of the words, almost as if the person from CGTN who took that screenshot wrote the email. But I'm sure that's not the case. Everything is fine. For some reason, after receiving this very reassuring email, the head of the WTA says he has a hard time believing it's actually from Peng Shuai. I wonder why. And maybe by this point you've come to the conclusion that the Chinese Communist Party is a disgustingly brutal, authoritarian regime without a shred of humanity. I mean, they kill people so they can sell their organs. But just in case you needed a little more convincing, while some are detained in China's massive COVID quarantine camps, health workers are breaking into their homes. To steal things? No. That's a run-of-the-mill kind of evil. This is the Chinese Communist Party we're talking about. No, they're killing people's pets. In one case, a dog owner named Miss Fu witnessed through her home security camera as people clothed in hazmat suits entered her home and beat her pet corgi to death with iron rods while she was away in a quarantine facility. On the bright side, she tested negative for COVID. To make things worse, the owner of this corgi was watching her home security cameras while it was happening and was begging the people to stop beating her dog. They did not stop. She shared the home security video on the Chinese internet and it went viral. I won't show it to you because, come on, we don't need to see that. She later took the video down after being pressured by local authorities and her employer. The problem is the Communist Party is pushing an insane zero COVID policy. Local officials who fail to keep COVID numbers down will get into big trouble, the kind of trouble you don't come back from. So in a panic, they resort to extreme measures. Miss Fu's case is not a one-off thing. In the northern city of Harbin, a woman reported that her 3 cats were killed in September while she was completing quarantine. Authorities in the cities of Chengdu and Wuxi have similarly entered private homes while their owners are in quarantine and killed their cats. Now, for context, the CDC does say COVID can spread from people to animals during close contact. But the risk of animals spreading COVID-19 to people is low. But if you're a paranoid Chinese official, even a low risk is unacceptable. This latest case of corgi killing has sparked outrage across the Chinese internet. Here's an example of a comment where someone talks about how the issue at heart here has always been the wanton infringement of individual rights by the endlessly expanding state power. I'm sure that comment has now been censored. And now it's time for me to answer a question from a member of the China Uncensored 50 Cent Army. It's what I call fans who support the show on the crowdfunding websites Patreon and Locals. William Dawson asks on Patreon, I've been watching a lot of Yuri Bezmenov lately and was really concerned. Do you think that the U.S. could win a war with such a handicap? Great question, William. For those of you who don't know, Yuri Bezmenov was a Soviet defector. You can see interviews with him on YouTube. They're very interesting. But basically, he saw firsthand how Soviet interests were infiltrating American society. Now, while a lot of this is controversial, there are well-documented instances of the Soviet Union funding front groups in the United States. The Chinese Communist Party does similar things. So today, you have some reports saying young Americans prefer socialism to capitalism. So the premise is, have communists infiltrated American society to the extent that it would affect America's China policy? Well, I'm happy to say that people across the political spectrum in the U.S. are fairly united in criticizing the Chinese Communist Party. AOC and Ted Cruz once joined together to condemn Apple for caving to Chinese demands on Hong Kong, and in asking the NBA to suspend activities in China. Those two don't agree on a lot. Bernie Sanders, a Democratic socialist, was one of the first U.S. politicians to specifically mention the need to release Falun Gong prisoners of conscience in China. And hey, remember the time Chuck Schumer said this?
I don't agree with President Trump on a whole lot, but today I want to give him a big pat on the back. He is doing the right thing when it comes to China.
Now, we definitely have problems with Wall Street being in the pocket of the Chinese Communist Party. And China has been working hard to influence U.S. politicians and media. But come on, they're killing people's pets while they're in quarantine camps. I don't care what your politics are. I think we're all in agreement on that one. And that's the beauty of the Chinese Communist Party. They're bringing together Americans. Thanks for your question and your support, William. And thank you for watching. And if you want to help us in the fight against the Chinese Communist Party, all it takes is hitting that like button, subscribing, and sharing the show with your friends and family. And if you want to go that extra step, you can support the show on Patreon or Locals. Links to each are below. You'll get some cool perks and have the chance to ask me questions I'll answer on the show. And then there's always the merch store. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.